Hello everybody, today we're going to learn the various techniques and tools for sharpening a chainsaw. I think this is very important because everyone in agriculture has got a chainsaw. Even everyone that lives in suburbia has a chainsaw. So I've got a little pole saw here we're going to start with, and I've got a bigger saw here. We're going to start with removing the bar nuts. Bar nuts are going to be 10mm, ½ inch, or 3/4 socket. This particular one's a 10mm, but depending on your brand of saw, Husqvarna is ½ inch. Steel's 3/4, and Echo can be 10mm or ½ inch. So remove this bar nut. Remove your clutch cover. Take a second. We're going to inspect the clutch cover. Clutch cover has a sharpener, has a tensioner here, and we're just going to look over the overall cleanliness. If it has a hole, that's a safety hazard. It needs to be replaced. We're going to take the bar and chain off. We're going to set that aside. We're going to analyze the cutter head assembly here. This is your sprocket. This is what drives the chain on the bar. So we're going to analyze. You'll see there's lines in it. That is very normal wear. If yours starts to have a divot where you can hang your fingernail in there, you need to replace the sprocket. That is a wear item, and it's very common to replace. Depending on how much you use the saw, it can be every other year, it could be a month if you're really cutting some wood. So, and then just overall cleanliness, and check to make sure everything's in good moving condition. Everything feels good. There's a bearing behind this. You want to make sure it feels good. Your studs for your bar and clutch cover are on there good, nice and tight. But this is in good condition. Cleanliness is a big thing. If you've got a wad of stuff here, clean it up. It's not good for anything. We're going to analyze the bar and chain here. We're going to take the chain off. We'll come back to it later. So we're going to analyze the trueness of the bar. So we don't have any divots here. If you are in a lot of dirt, you'll get a divot right here. And so we don't have this problem here, so it's in good shape. You're going to check with your fingernail, make sure there's not a lip there. If you may have to resurface it, if not, it's not a big deal to resurface. You're going to check your bearing up here. This should be very easy to spin. If it's not, or if it's stuck, you have to replace your bar. It's not hard to find a bar. But overall, this one's in good condition. How's yours? We're going to look at the chain that came off this. We're going to make sure no nails were hit or metal. So in older plantations or acreage, it's very common to find nails, just from bird houses, owl houses, just stuff like that that's rotted off and bark has grown around over the years. And so we just need to look at that. You'll see a small indentation. It's pretty noticeable. If you have that, you need to address it, and that means you're gonna have to file that one more. But it's a lot of work, and so I'm just gonna put that out there. This chain looks in pretty good overall condition. So how to sharpen a chain. Now we're going to go over the various tools in a minute, but I want to show you on another chain that's brand new a few things. So this is your sawtooth. This is a brand new chain. It's in excellent condition. So there's a line right here. You see that line? That line means a lot. One, it's the angle you sharpen your chain at. And two, that's the most wear you can allow. When your tooth gets worn down to that line, you need to throw the chain away. It's wore out, it's done its time. Some people still cut with them and say they cut fine, but it's a danger. So, like I said, this is a brand new chain, so it's if you can have a brand new chain beside you while you're working your chain over and sharpening, it's nice to see what a new one is. That way you've got an example of what to go by for your exact saw. Every saw has a different chain, and you can even get custom chains, so it's hard to say over video here what chain you have. Okay, your tools. So these are your typical round files. Round files have been around for centuries. Some are one single direction cut, some are bidirectional, and they're different sizes. Like I just got through saying, there's no set chainsaw file for every chain. And so you need to go look at your package of your chain, and it'll tell you what size file to get. As far as the difference between these files, It's just length. That's a personal preference. Some, a longer stroke means more cutting per stroke. Some, prefer a short stroke. It's personal preference. It does not matter. So this is a flat file for your drags. Your drags is what gauges how much that tooth cuts. And a lot of people will go without ever touching the drags. And it's important I think it's important to shave those drags down just a little bit to let a little more cutting, and it's amazing the difference you'll see. So this is your regular file setup. This is old school, like I said, been around for centuries. Some of your new school setups is like this. So this is a steel one. This has a file and round file and flat file combined, and it's got lines that are supposed to be parallel to the saw when you're sharpening. So you're sharpening like this or like this, depending on which side you're on of the chain, because they go different sides here. And this does it in one pass. This is the ticket. Now this is about $50 or so. It's well worth the money. But you just set it up on your saw and you do one stroke at a time, and you are getting that drag and that tooth sharpened or filed down in one stroke. It's an excellent tool. Highly suggest. We also have an electric chainsaw sharpener here. This is commonly found at most of your saw shops. I have one because I work on a lot of chainsaws and I cut some wood every now and then. That's an expensive tool if you're just one saw owner, and it's not really economically feasible if you're just a homeowner. So, and there's always the option of just taking it down to the local dealer or the hardware store, spend $5-10, have it sharpened. The only downfall to that is if you're working on a Sunday and hit something you need to sharpen, you still need to have a way to sharpen. Unless you have spare chains or you just quit for the day, which is completely fine if you can do that. So I've got a saw here. I'll move it a little more in view. So like I said, you're going to pay attention to that angle. Okay, that line tells you the angle. Like I said, it's either 25, 30, or 35 degrees. Most of your larger saws are all 30 or 25 or 30, and then most of your smaller saws are 30 to 35. And so when you're selecting your file, you want to make sure it sits in that tooth perfectly. So I'll bring this closer to view for you. So you want it to be just barely above that tooth and making sure you see minimal light through there, and if any. And so that helps you get that angle perfect for when you're sharpening. And so depending on the file you have, it's either single direction or bidirectional. Most of it's single, and many people like to push. And I think that's the right way to do it. A lot of personal opinions on that, but you push and you do small strokes, okay? So I'm not going to go through sharpening a whole chain. We don't have time for all that, but that's the proper method, okay? So, and then if you have this, you do the same thing, one stroke at a time, like I showed you. So, anyways, but that's pretty much it. If you're on an electric grinder, if you happen to have one, you still set it up the same way, 25, 30, 35 degrees, and you have to set your depth and make sure you have the right blade. So you have the blade here, it needs to be able to work in that crevice of that chain, and you have to set the grinder so it doesn't go too deep, because that will cause excessive wear on your links, and that'll cause a chain to break in half, and that's a huge safety hazard. So set it up, and not too deep, make sure it's close, and just scratching it. That's the whole thing with filing or any sharpening, really. You just want to scratch that metal. You don't want to make a hole or a divot. That'll cause excessive wear. So a lot of people are opposed to using an electric grinder, just because some people aren't aware that if you heat this up too much, that causes your life of your chain to go down drastically. Your metal loses carbon. It's not the same. So if you do have an electric chainsaw sharpener, be sure and take care of it. Keep it clean and reduce that heat as much as you can. Be very gentle. It's very easy to mess a chain up with one of these. So when you're putting it back together, you want to, when you're reassembling, one, make sure your chains are in the right direction. Over the years, I can't tell you how many people have brought in a chainsaw and says this thing won't cut. Well, your chain's on backwards, sir. And so, just sometimes it gets the best of you. You're not thinking about it. Put your chain on, and then when you're tightening it up, you have to pick the saw bar up. And otherwise, if you leave it down, the first thing you do when you set it in a tree, it's going to be loose again. So you need to pick the bar up, and then you want to tension it till it's tight and snug to the bar, but easy to move. That's the kicker. Some people do tight and snug to the bar, but you have to put some force to move it. You don't want that. You just want to be able to easily move it and snug to the bar. You got to remember, little tiny motors pushing this chain. So tighten snug to the bar, and tighten your bar nuts, and you are good to go. Pretty simple steps, and that's pretty much it. Nothing special here. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. But this is the basics of chainsaw sharpening. Thank you. Have a good day.